So today I'll be talking about use of excessive force in law enforcement and the effects that it has on the general public. So one of the most talked about issues in policing today is the use of excessive force. Cases such as the George Floyd case, it brought national attention to this case and really raised a concern for the general public. Excessive force is not just about that case, though. However, there are several other cases, especially recently, with things like ICE, just the power that they hold above the general public, and how they affect people. So what exactly is excessive force? Excessive force happens when a police officer uses more physical force than is necessary to handle a situation, such as using their firearms in a situation where they could have gotten away with using their taser and taking the suspect into custody. Police are allowed to use this force. However, it's only allowed when it's used in a reasonable situation, such as if that suspect has a firearm and is brandishing it towards them or threatening them in a certain way that is threatening their life. For example, if someone is unarmed or not resisting, using severe force like choking or repeatedly striking them would likely be considered excessive force. On the other hand, if an officer is facing a serious threat, like someone with a weapon, like I had just mentioned, a higher level of force may be justified, such as using their firearm. The problem that we have is what counts as reasonable force, and that's where we kind of run into conflict, because people have very different definitions of when it is necessary to use firearms as a police officer, and that's basically what we're talking about today. So why does excessive force happen? There's not just one reason for this. It's usually a combination of factors. I would say the biggest factor that comes into play when excessive force is being talked about is the training and decision making under pressure for police officers. So maybe when a cop is in a situation that is considered stressful for them, just like us humans and us civilians, us regular people, we sometimes make decisions that aren't the best when we're held in a situation that is of high pressure. So just like us, police officers have to deal with that same thing, where sometimes it's hard to make the right decision and sometimes they make the wrong decision. And secondly, a lack of accountability. In some cases, officers are not held responsible for their misconduct, so they're not punished for using this force. And that can kind of create a level of acceptance for physical force or for deadly force that is not quite correct. And sometimes by seeing that, other officers feel that it is okay to use force when it is not necessary. Finally, police culture. Officers deal with a huge amount of stress and danger on the daily, keeping them always on guard for their life. So even in the smallest of situations, when they feel like they're stressed, it's sometimes hard to make the right decisions. So overall, I would just say that when it comes to excessive force and why it happens, it really comes down to training of the officers and just the stress of certain situations, and it could be difficult on those officers. Why does this problem matter? Excessive force has a severe impact on not only the police, but it also has an effect on the families and the individuals that these acts are committed against. So for individuals, it could lead to obviously death or severe injury. And for families and communities, it creates fear and anger against those police officers. So ultimately, it leads to mistrust against the police, and that leads to more and more consequences. On a larger scale, though, it damages the trust in the law enforcement. I think that's the biggest problem here. When people feel that police officers may use unnecessary force, they're less likely to cooperate them, which creates more and more problems for the police officers. And typically in these situations, when individuals don't trust the police, they're more hostile towards the police, and that could lead to more use of force, whether it's deadly or non-deadly. Ultimately, it just leads to more force being used. But yeah, it ultimately, why this matters completely is because if you don't have trust in the police officers to protect and serve as they're meant to be, then it's just not a safe environment to live in. So what are some ways that we could fix this problem? There's several ways that we could fix this. One is better training for the police officers and figuring out how to get them through these stressful situations in order to come to a more peaceful solution to problems rather than using force on civilians. Another solution that's already been used worldwide is the use of body cameras, meaning that every action that is conducted, whether it's in a traffic stop or a drug bust or anything, police always need to be wearing their body cameras, meaning that every action that they do and the civilian does are recorded. Therefore, there's no longer a my word against their word. It's what happened and what did not happen. Some people also support policy changes to this, such as stricter rules on when force can be used and clearer consequences when it's missed or misused. I'm sorry. So, say a cop uses their gun on a civilian that it did not need to be used on, then there are more severe consequences than there has been, such as being put on leave without pay, and ultimately forcing them to resign, getting those bad cops out of the mix, and restoring trust in the police officers. There's also been a push recently with non-deadly weapons, such as pepper balls and rubber bullets that have been used to replace the use of firearms, so that the police can't just take the life of somebody. That just leads to it being easier to detain the suspect in a more peaceful manner. So overall, this is a very complex issue that we are still working on to fix to this day. It's not just in our country, it's in every country. It's a very real problem, and I think ultimately more training for the officers in these stressful situations would lead to the best outcome for this problem. But it doesn't just happen overnight. It's one of those things that we need to keep working on day by day and fix one step at a time. But yeah, I think that more training for these officers, and also realizing that it's not always the officer's fault if they feel in danger, and we just need to come to an agreement with the police and figure out this problem and fix it.